Alright, so now we're going to do a couple examples of subtraction involving borrowing with like and unlike denominators. So we're going to start with an example where the denominators are already the same. And what we have to recognize here is that 1/3 is smaller than 2/3, so we can't do our subtraction of fractions. We're going to have to borrow and make 9 and 1/3 into a mixed number with an improper fraction. And so we know that we can take 1 away from 9 and make it 8. And then we can add 3/3 to 1/3 to get our fraction here. So we get 8 and 4/3 minus 1 and 2/3. And so now that I've borrowed, I can just do the subtracting like I've been doing. Subtract my whole numbers. 8 minus 1 is 7. And 4/3 minus 2/3 is 2/3. And we know that 9 and 1/3 minus 1 and 2/3 is 7 and 2/3. On the next example, we recognize not only do we have different denominators, but it shows adding when really we have to subtract because signs are different. And so the first thing I'm going to do is make my denominators the same. So 8 and 6 have a common multiple of 24. So I'm going to do 8 times 3. So I get -5 and 9 over 24. Plus 6 times 4 is 24. So I'm going to multiply denominator and numerator here by 4, and I get 20 24ths. So far I have -5 and 9 24ths plus 3 and 20 24ths. Now when signs are different, we subtract positives and negatives here. So 5 minus 3 I can do, but I cannot do 9 24ths minus 20 24ths. So before I do my subtraction, I'm going to have to use this little borrowing technique that we're doing. So I have to take 1 away from 5 and make it a 4. And then I have to add 24 24ths to my fraction to make this a mixed number with an improper fraction here to get what I need. So I've got 4 and 9 plus 24 is 33 over 24. And that's actually a negative. -4 and 33 over 24. Plus 3 and 20 over 24. Now I can do my subtraction. 4 minus 3 is 1. 33 24ths minus 20 24ths is 13 24ths. And I can keep the sign of the higher number, which in this case is negative. So I've got -1 and 13 24ths as my final answer for -5 and 3/8 plus 3 and 5/6. On this next example, we should recognize that we have to use copy, change, change. So we copy the first number, change subtraction to addition, change negative to positive. Once I do that, I have different signs, so I'm going to have to subtract 8 and 2/9 minus 1 and 7/9. Notice that I'm not doing 1 minus 8. I'm starting with my bigger number 8 and doing 8 minus 1, but 2/9 is a smaller fraction. So I am going to have to use the borrowing technique to make 8 and 2/9 an improper or a mixed number with an improper fraction. So I'm going to borrow 1 from 8 and make it 7. And I'm going to add 9/9 to 2/9. So I get -7 and 11/9 plus 1 and 7/9. Again, I've got different signs, so now I can do my subtraction because I can do 11 minus 7. So 7 minus 1 is 6. 11/9 minus 7/9 is 4/9. Keep the sign of my higher number, in this case is -7, so I've got my answer as negative. 4/9 is in simplest form, and so -8 and 2/9 minus -1 and 7/9 is equal to -6 and 4/9. And then on this last example for this video, we've got 1 and 2/3 plus -3 and 1/2. Signs are different, so I am going to have to subtract. But in order to subtract, I have to create a common denominator. And so I'm looking at 3 and 2, thinking what number do they both go into? And I know that they both go into 6. So I'm going to make a common denominator of 6. I'm going to multiply 3 by 2 and 2 times 3, and I'm going to multiply their numerators by the same number that I multiplied the denominator. So now I'm going to rewrite this as 1 and 4/6 plus -3 and 3/6. And now I need to do my subtraction but I have to do my big number minus my small number. So I could do 3 minus 1, but I cannot do 3/6 minus 4/6. Don't fall into the trap where you want to do 4/6 minus 3/6 and then do 3 minus 1. You've got to do whatever your whole number is biggest, which in this case is 3. You've got to use this fraction first, 3/6 minus 4/6, which we can't do. So that tells us it's time to do the borrowing technique. Take 1 away from 3 and make it a 2. Add 6/6 to our fraction, and we get 1 4/6 plus negative 2 9/6. Now I can do the subtraction that I need to because my bigger whole number also has my bigger fraction. 2 minus 1 is 1. 9/6 minus 4/6 is 5/6. And keep the sign of the higher number, which is negative. So 1 2/3 plus negative 3 1/2 is equal to negative 1 5/6. The biggest thing to recognize here is that when you have a fraction or a mixed number, you're doing the big minus the small. So you're looking at the whole numbers to figure out which number is bigger. But sometimes the whole number that's bigger does not have the fraction that's bigger. And that's when we have to use the borrowing technique. When the whole number that's biggest, 9 is bigger than 1, has the smaller fraction, 1/3 compared to 2/3. Or over here, my whole number is 5, my whole number here is 3, so 5 is bigger. But 3/8 or 9/24 was smaller than 20/24. And so I had to borrow to do the subtraction that I needed. Because if I'm going to start with this number is bigger, then I also have to borrow and do this fraction first minus the second fraction.